Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to take a little look at the 19th Psalm today. Welcome to yet another video in our Chiasm studies. Psalm 19 is one of the most beautiful psalms in the entire Bible, and it has a wonderful flow to it. There's a lot of chiasms in Psalm 19, and the entire psalm is chiastic in itself. So we're going to take a little look. One of the things that we need to do is to get a general picture of the structure of the passage and see how that works when we look at the entire psalm. Psalm 19 is divided into two halves. The first half of the psalm begins with the words, "The heavens declare the glory of God." The last half of the psalm begins with the phrase, "The law of the Lord is perfect." In each of the two halves, the divine title is different. The first half of the psalm one time says, "The heavens declare the glory of God." Most of your translations render this as God, and that's the Hebrew word Elohim. The second part of the 19th Psalm, beginning with the law of the Lord is perfect, uses the word Yahweh, and that's the covenant-making God, and that appears 7 times. So in the first half of the psalm, God appears once. In the second half, Yahweh appears 7 times. The first half is about seeing God in creation. Now, when I said about, Psalm 19 has many layers to it. There's 3 or 4 at least. But this is one of those we're going to look at just the most superficial layer, the easiest to see. The first half talks about the revelation of God that may be there. You might see the knowledge of God or gain some sense that God is there. But you can't know him. The second half of the psalm, beginning with "the law of the Lord is perfect," uses Yahweh. This is the God you can know, the covenant-making God. And of course, it's wonderful that the name Yahweh appears 7 times. The introduction to the psalm is to the chief musician, a psalm of David. In the Hebrew word order, those 3 words appear in the same order: musician, psalm, David. Also in the Septuagint, the words appear in the same order. Now, this makes the entire psalm a chiasm. Remember, a chiasm has the first component corresponding to the last component, and the second to the second last, and so on. So the last part of the psalm ends with, "O Lord, my strength and Redeemer." Lord, strength, and Redeemer. If you put all of those words together, you see a really wonderful chiasm. As the psalm opens, musician, psalm, David, Lord, strength, Redeemer. I'll do that again. Musician, psalm, David, Lord, strength, Redeemer. So musician is the person, is the thing that the person who received the psalm was doing, and at the end it is the Lord who is our Redeemer. Psalm actually comes from the word to pluck, as to pluck a harp, and so you see pluck and psalm, and then David and Lord. So it's a really wonderful chiasm. The psalm begins with, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork." In the Hebrew interlinear, we'll render the phrase a little bit different. It shows it actually is an A-B-B-A chiasm. The heavens declare the glory of God, and his handiwork shown in the firmament. So you're probably all familiar with that verse. The next verse, verse 2, we're not going to do all the verses here. We just want to give you a picture of this wonderful passage, this wonderful psalm. "Day unto day utters speech. Night unto night reveals knowledge." I'll say that again. And this Hebrew and English word order or phrase order is the same. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. So that is rendered as an A-B-A-B chiasm. It's still chiastic in that you have 2 primary thoughts and 2 secondary thoughts. You could write it this way: day unto day utters speech, knowledge is revealed night unto night. But it's not necessary. It's probably a little bit clumsy, and it wasn't that way in the Hebrew. Again, there is another A-B-A-B chiasm in the next verse, in verse 3. "There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard." So there's no speech nor language where their voice is not heard, and that's an A-B-A-B chiasm. They each contain 4 elements, and that's how they're rendered. The next one is a little bit more difficult. We're going to read through it. It is actually a more traditional style chiastic structure when you see that in the Hebrew in an interlinear. I'll just read the verse. "Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tabernacle for the sun. Now the Hebrew phrasing from any interlinear you look at reads it like this. And I'll use my hands to mark up the chiasm. Through all the earth, their line has gone out, and the words to the end of the world, he has set them a tabernacle for the sun. Through all the earth, tabernacle for the sun. So you see that cosmic component. Now let me say about the 19th Psalm, it is not just about this. There's layers of revelation in this, and we certainly will not have time to do all of that. Now in the next verse, verse 5, we're back to this A-B chiasm, which is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber and rejoices like a strong man to run his race. So again, you have that same thing. The Hebrew word order is the same, or the phrase order is the same, I should say. It's like a bridegroom, chamber, strong man, race. Beautiful, isn't it? Now, continuing on the bridegroom, chamber, sun theme in verse 6, I'll read this now. The entire psalm is chiastic. Not every verse is, but you do see a bit of a chiastic revelation here when you look at the Hebrew word order. Let me read it to you in English. This is verse 6 from the New King James. Its rising is from one end of heaven and its circuit to the other end, and there's nothing hidden from its heat. So when you look at the Hebrew phrase order, you can see this. From one end of heaven, its rising is, and its circuit to the other end, and there's nothing hidden from its heat. Now that component, there's nothing hidden from its heat, is part of the overall structure of the psalm, but it's just interesting that right there is another A-B-B-A chiasm. The psalm is full of them. Now the next 5 verses are all arranged in the same Hebrew and English order. They're all A-B-A-B chiastic doublets, okay? So just look for the poetic balance in these. Now again, you can look this up in any Hebrew-English interlinear, and you can see that how that works, and they're very, very close. Even if you look at the Septuagint, any interlinear, you see the same modeling take place. So let me just read these and follow my hands if you're, just to get the picture of what we're doing here. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. So here we have 3 verses, each a chiastic doublet, all talking about the law of God. And so there's multiple statements here about the law, and you see this flowing. So I'm going to read it without the hand movement. Just listen to the flow here as I read this. Just follow with me. Hear it flow. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. So you see this poetics. Even in the Hebrew, it was written, it's probably more beautiful in that language. It still flows once you translate it if you look and honor the structure. Now the next 2 verses are not necessarily talking about the law in the same way, but they're very important, especially the first verse here. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. Now, if you look at a concordance or commentary, you'll see that the word refined gold can also mean precious stones. So it gives you the sense of more to be desired are they than gold, or even than gold that's refined and put in a setting. You can see that. And it flows on with the second one. Sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. Now, the concept of honey and the honeycomb is very important in Scripture. It flows all the way through Scripture. There's some research been done on the 19th Psalm that shows the 19th Psalm paralleling the creation week and the 7 feasts of the Lord, and talking about the land of milk and honey. We certainly don't have time to do that today. We're just looking at the absolute surface here. If you were to take all of the research done in just this psalm, looking at the structure, looking at the cross references, looking at the layout, and put it into a book, and well reference the book, the book would probably be 300 to 500 pages. There's so much material. We're still learning, even though we're thousands of years past the writing of some of these passages. Scholars are still learning and still understanding some of the nuances and some of the subtleties that we find even in the Psalms and even in a short psalm like this one. Maybe at a later time we'll do a video looking at some of the other covenant parallels and parallels with the feasts of the Lord. 19th Psalm divides in two halves. For years, scholars thought that, or some scholars over the years thought, this was actually two psalms jammed together in one. But when they've looked at the structure and looked at it, they realize it's one psalm telling a very interesting series of messages. The first message is, the heavens declare the glory of God, that God can only be known or seen through his creation, but just seen. You say, oh, he's up there. Somehow there's a God, someone built this. You have that sense of, I can't know him. I somehow know might be a builder, but I'm not sure. The second half of the psalm begins with, the law of the Lord is perfect. So in the first half of the psalm, the word God is used, Elohim. In the second half of the psalm, the word Yahweh, the covenant-making God, is used. And that is 7 times. We read the 6 times where that's being used in the 3 chiastic doublets. And in the end, it's also used where David dedicates the psalm to the Lord. Now, the chiastic psalm itself is... The psalm itself is chiastic. It begins with the chief musician, and it ends with a reference to the Lord, our strength, our Redeemer. When you read passages like this, my strong advice to you is to look for the structure, look for the flow of the passage. One of the things that people are not aware of, or they seem to miss when they read especially the Psalms, is that the introduction is integral to the passage. The psalm will begin. You'll read the introduction and it will say something like, to the chief musician, a psalm of David. That's almost exactly what it says in the New King James Version or the King James Version. And then if you look at an interlinear, you'll see verse 1, the heavens declare the glory of God. Well, unfortunately, the verses are the problem. Really the beginning of verse 1, if there are verses at all, and they weren't really put there by God, they're put there by man for reference, should have begun at, to the chief musician, a psalm of David, the heavens declare the glory of God. So what we want to do is encourage you to read the Psalms again, look at the introduction, look at the outflow, how they all lay down, look for chiastic structure. God bless you. Come back soon.